On December 30th, 2022, I headed to West Leb to run a few errands. One of my stops was CVS. I don't actually recall what was on my list that morning, but I know I bought a roll of on-sale wrapping paper because I almost left without it until the cashier called me back. I remember thanking him, but then my memory goes blank. It returns with a thud. Something hit me, something big, and I went down. After the first tire rolled over me, I could see the bottom of the car above me, and I remember thinking, holy crap, I gotta wake up from this nightmare. And then I heard a woman screaming, "Why does she keep driving? She's running her over." And that's when it dawned on me, this isn't a dream. I felt the second tire start to go over me, and that's when I must have lost consciousness. In the first weeks after the accident, I kept wondering, are my memories consistent with what actually happened? Did one tire roll over me and then another? I don't know why, but it really bothered me not to know if the pictures in my head were accurate. Fortunately, I was able to get answers because the accident was captured on the security cameras out front of the CVS. Before you start thinking I'm crazy, no, I did not watch that video. Instead, once I was home, Officer Pat of the Lebanon Police Department talked through the sequence of events with me and my wife, Cheryl. I was hit while in the crosswalk. I hadn't just stepped off the curb, but I was more than halfway across. The car's license plate collided with my left knee, and then each of the tires on the passenger side rolled over my fallen body. What? Sorry. Those images are ones I will never forget. But they don't keep me up at night. They don't haunt me when I bike to work or walk the dirt roads of Vermont. They don't even haunt me when I'm walking through a parking lot. Sorry. What? I will admit that I have not returned. I want to just go back. They don't haunt me. They don't even haunt me in parking lots. I'll admit, I have not returned to that particular plaza on 12A. And I am more careful and vigilant in all parking lots as a driver or a pedestrian. But those images, those memories, are no different than any others in my brain. They're just memories. They don't trigger panic, cause me to freeze, or incite nightmares. When I came to, I was lying on my back on the cold pavement. There was a woman on either side of me, and they were holding my hands. My first thought was, oh my gosh, they're holding my hands. I'm going to be okay. And from that waking moment, my recovery began. 20 months later, I can think clearly, work on my feet all day, pull weeds from our garden, and best of all, I can babysit our young grandchildren. Those months were hard, especially in the beginning. But I believe that the touch of those women's hands allowed me to get where I am today. I can't tell you the number of times in the days, weeks, and months that followed that those thoughts came back to me. They're holding my hands. I'm going to be okay. I felt comfort within a split second of becoming conscious because people instinctively knew what to do, to reach out with their hands. Studies have shown that prosocial touch provides a buffer to stress through regulating physiological responses. And it's my belief that the timing of that touch made a huge difference in the trajectory of my recovery. When that car collided with my body, a primitive part of my brain went into action, triggering stress hormones that signaled me to flee, fight, do something, protect yourself. Well, it's pretty obvious fleeing and fighting weren't an option at that point. But I do remember curling my arms into my chest in hopes of protecting myself from further injury. I'm sure those hormones were pumping through my body as I lay there unconscious. But then, the hands that reached out for mine, as well as the pair that held my head, changed everything in that waking moment and in every day since. I had that buffer. I imagine the sensations that I received through my hands dominating what registered in my brain that morning. And even if that's not what actually happened physiologically, I know it's what happened spiritually. It carried me through. Those hands that morning had the power to protect and later to heal. I can only imagine how it might have been different for my wife Cheryl had she had someone to hold her hand as she first received the news of the accident. She was alone with our almost 3-year-old granddaughter, and it wasn't until later when our son got home that he was able to hold her hand as they headed to the hospital. A couple days after the accident, I casually mentioned to Cheryl something about the tires that had rolled over me. My wife looked stunned as she said, "Wait, what do you mean?" Cheryl knew that getting run over by a car meant I had been under the chassis, but she hadn't let herself consider the idea that I had been under the tires. I'll never forget the look of fear and pain on her face. And weeks later, as we listened to Officer Pat, that same look came across her face. I could feel the fear coming off her body. While that conversation offered me solace in knowing that my memories were correct, it was far from comforting for Cheryl. There were many people supporting Cheryl through our journey, but she didn't have somebody that first instant to hold her hand, to provide that buffer, to signal, she'll be okay. Cheryl's hands held our life together through my recovery, yet she was the one who was up at 3 a.m., unable to fall back asleep. If only someone had been there to hold her hand when the phone rang. Cheryl and our 2 sons learned a lot those first mornings in the trauma bay of the ED. My family was relieved to know that I didn't have a brain bleed. The scans revealed 2 fractures in the right side of my pelvis, one on the left side, sorry about that, I'll start that again. The scans revealed 2 fractures on the left side of my pelvis, one on the right side of my sacrum, 10 broken ribs, and multiple fractures in my right ankle. Though I did have a mild brain injury and a bruised lung, my skeleton had done its job. It protected my organs from a 3,000-pound vehicle. I'm still astounded that I didn't have more internal injuries. My spinal cord was untouched. Those people in the parking lot remained with me those first days in the hospital. The women continued to hold my hand when the pain was excruciating, and when I would struggle to stand, only for my blood pressure to drop and send me right back down to the mattress. The sensations I felt from those hands stayed with me and allowed me to focus on my healing and to sleep through the night without waking in panic, even when I saw those images from under the car. A week after the accident, my doctors determined that I was ready for the next phase, to head to an acute rehab facility. I wasn't so sure. I knew something about acute rehab because just 18 months earlier, I had returned to school to study physical and occupational therapy. I knew that in acute rehab, I would be expected to participate in 3 hours, at least 3 hours of therapy every day. How the heck was I going to do that? I hadn't even walked out of my hospital room yet. I was still using a bedpan, for goodness sake. When I got anxious about the transfer and the work ahead of me, I thought of those hands and realized I'd be okay. It was time for that next phase. When I was preparing for this talk, I looked back at pictures, and I was particularly struck by one that was taken on that very first morning in the acute rehab hospital. Compared to a selfie I had taken of my forehead just days before, you'd hardly know anything had happened. The gash and scrapes were almost invisible. My body was healing so fast. Within that first day in acute rehab, I was able to ditch the bedpan because I could get on the toilet. 10 days later, I was ready to tackle the stairs into our home. And within a month, I no longer felt the effects of the TBI. My bones were healing and becoming stronger at every fracture than they had been before the accident. I am in awe of our bodies. It wasn't just the hands of those women that made a huge difference in my recovery. I had the support of the world around me. And researchers contend that social support makes a huge difference in how we respond to stress and trauma. My social support began with the bystander who called 911, with the woman who stopped the driver who had no idea she had run over a person, and with all those who knelt beside me that morning. From there, I had the support of friends and family at every turn. One friend drove over to Dartmouth Hitchcock to get my broken glasses, came back here to Woodstock to get them repaired, and brought them to me in hopes that I might feel a little less disoriented if I could see clearly. She did all that for me before I was even out of the ED. And then a week later, as I entered my room at the rehab hospital, 2 of my PT/OT classmates were there hanging posters welcoming me and encouraging me to the next phase of my recovery. While I was at that hospital, other friends came and built railings into our home so that I could get in and out without the use of my right leg. I had visitors in rehab, at home, and one of my favorite things was every day seeing the comments of encouragement on the website that my mom helped me update so that people knew what was going on. 2 of my high school teachers even called my mom to check in and send their love. Those were hands that guided me over 40 years ago. All that social support kept me going, bolstered my belief in my recovery, and reminded me that my struggles wouldn't last. And then there were all the new people in my life, all those health providers who put their hands on my body and their hearts into my healing. My first PT and OT treatment occurred just 2 days after the accident, less than 24 hours after the trauma surgeon had repaired my ankle. I remember the providers came in together, and they held not my hands per se, but the gait belt on either side. I was amazed when they got me standing. In the end, I had PT and OT treatment in 4 different settings, and my last treatment was December 4th, 2023, just a few weeks before the anniversary of the accident. It was surreal to be experiencing what I had read in textbooks and heard in lectures and even practiced in lab that whole year before. But the really cool thing is that I now get to use what those OTs and PTs taught me as I work with patients where I was I get to use what I learned from those PTs and OTs as I provide therapy for others where I was a patient not long ago. And it's not just the lessons from the PTs and OTs that I use now. I so appreciate the nursing assistant who came into my room with a smile on her face and a look of patience as she came in to change my bedpan one morning. I'm not sure, though, that her genuine care would have stuck with me, except that she had that same smile, same patience, the 6th, 7th, and 8th time that she came in to change my bedpan the same day. And then I loved that we could joke about the power of the stool softeners to battle the side effects of those painkillers. Another LNA remembered without fail to quiet her voice and slow her movements every time she came in my room, because the TBI made me way too sensitive to sound and motion. I strive to be like those LNAs every time I enter a patient's room now. I'm not sure those women who held my hands on December 30th are aware of the impact they had on my recovery, on my life. In a lot of ways, they counterbalanced that 3,000-pound vehicle. I've wanted so much for them to know, but I don't know who they are. Over time, I've come to realize that we often don't know when we make a difference for someone. And I kind of think maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe we don't need to know. But what really matters is that we make that effort, because we all have the ability to use pro-social touch and to support, as so many others have done for me. Remember, you have the power to use your hands to reach out, to comfort. And don't hesitate, because the timing matters. You may not specifically know the difference that you'll make, but I assure you, it's well worth offering your hands to another. Thank you.